Welcome to 52 Miniatures. My name is Alex. In the latest release for Warhammer 40,000, the biggest tabletop miniatures game on the planet, the major players, Space Marines, super space soldiers, go about battling it out with Tyranids. The Tyranids kind of look like how we've envisioned alien xenomorph life forms ever since the release of the classic film Alien. But what if a Space Marine would actually meet the original xenomorph? An epic battle scene would of course be epic. A drooling xenomorph dueling it out with the massive hulk of a Space Marine. But what is really scary is the face-hugger things. Jumping up from nowhere, attaching itself to your face like a teenage love. Only this one leaves an alien in your chest that will eventually eat itself out, causing quite the feeling of duress. Maybe similar to the sensation of getting your heart broken by the same teenage love. Who would win? The mutant human or the Xeno? So I want to make a miniature diorama of a Space Marine that walks into an alien-infested spaceship, a storeroom or similar, triggering the face-hugger senses, instant faceplant. I found a sort of 3D Space Marine head online, as well as a face-hugger alien on my Thingiverse, and did an amateur attempt at merging the two in Mesh Mixer. I know nothing of 3D sculpting and such, doing my best to make this hopefully printable on my 3D printer. The legs of the hugger were very thin and difficult to not rip up when cleaning the 3D print from supports. There were swear words involved in the process, as well as superglue repairs. The exceptionally surprised Horus Heresy era Space Marine was primed brown. Why brown? Well, it is of course part of the United States Colonial Marine Corps, part of the Marine Space Forces, an American military unit that serves as the United Americas Interstellar Force in readiness, ready at all times to operate in environments far from home. Soldiers that are part of the Alien franchise featured in films and games and comics, and they wear camouflage. So-called multicam, woodland camouflage. This is rather funny as space is mainly black and probably not forested. As my patrons said, black armor with sequins on it would maybe have been the best space camouflage. Darth Vader was right all along. Anyway, I'm doing camouflage, something I've never attempted before, using a drab green, sand yellow, ivory, dark grey, together with a brown base coat. Attempting a pattern based on a branch of a tree shape thing, like the letter Y, but whoever is drawing the Y had a few too many drinks. Doing camouflage was daunting and visually challenging. I kind of felt like I've just been randomly smudging paint all over. The armored shapes of the miniature kind of don't fit all that well with the camouflage pattern. They're much too rigid. I'm sure this would look more natural on fatigues. There is also the size of the individual parts of the pattern to consider. Smaller would have been maybe better for a miniature that will be studied in detail, but would have appeared blurry at tabletop distance. My Marine turned out pretty ugly up front, but reads well as a camouflaged Marine at arm's length distance. I was painting the Marine in a rented cabin up north. How I ended up there is a long story shrouded in mystery. Luckily, I did bring a little hobby setup, precariously packed, camouflage paints and all. Kind of ironic now that we're going to talk about the sponsor of this video, Frontier Wargaming, well known for their fantastic travel cases. Lovely looking wooden paint stations for the traveling painter, or for the pretty yet flexible home setup. Only I didn't get one of the chests, even though I loved to paint when traveling. Instead, I ordered paint racks. Because, well, just look at these paint racks. Sturdy, good-looking paint racks for wall mounting or placing on desktops. Different options for extra drawers, and my favorite, the interchangeable system with trays for different types of paint pots, including tube paint holders for my beloved oil paints that can easily be moved from rack to rack. The sides of the racks can be stained as you wish. I asked for bunker grey. Everyone should have a bit of bunker in their life. And there are light options. Very flashy LED lights that can do all kinds of BPM-based stereoscopic effects. For that second date when you kinda want to impress. I desperately tried to find the old man's button of one continuous light, and that was possible too. In all seriousness, what I really appreciate with these paint racks is the quality of the wood, the build, combined with aesthetics and the smart tray system. Please check out Frontier Wargaming, there will be a link in the description, and thank you Frontier Wargaming for sponsoring this video. The United States Colonial Marine Corps, or Marine Space Force, does of course have a logo type. A very futuristic space travel logo inspired by the US flag. Something I thought might look good on one of the pauldrons of the mighty Marine Space Force Marine. I chose to do only the red and the white stripes. I felt that the blue would for some reason mess with my color scheme. I also did not feel like doing the freehand stars. The red and the white stripes, on the other hand, rather simple patterns to paint that I figured I could get away with. Rising sun vibes when done, but I like it. It totally defeats the purpose of camouflage and is therefore perfect from a Warhammer 40k perspective, where glory for the Emperor and his space force is way more important than hiding in the bushes trying to not get eaten by giant alien bugs. Once done, I covered the entire miniature in a mix of about half and half contrast paint and Agrax Earthshade with a dash of Black Templar contrast paint for good measure. Toning down all the camouflage, adding extra depth to recesses, staining everything a slightly unifying brown, like the results of spending a lifetime in the sun. Once dry, I highlighted the camouflage. I know, sounds like a lot of work, and it kinda was. But I was desperately trying to create some definition in this jumble of crooked lines. I could now highlight to create a more interesting pattern, but also focus on highlighting parts that would be highlighted on the armor, like edge-style highlights. Highlighting the brown worked out real well. There's not enough brown Marines around. Seeing as monks' robes often are brown, that's kind of a surprise to me. After that, my quest for definition led me to painting rather diluted black in a lot of crevices and shaded areas. Once more to enhance the shape of the miniature, shapes that have been quite successfully, well, camouflaged. I'm telling you, painting camouflage was no picnic. Quite outside my comfort zone. I still can't make my mind up if I like it or not. It's just there. Or not. Depends on how good the camouflage is. The facehugger was a simple job of not really knowing how to paint things, thus commencing with whatever feels like fun. In this case, Caucasian skin tones. Now, drawing inspiration from films when it comes to color is at times tricky, especially sci-fi. A film like Alien, for example, is often dark, dramatically lit, orange or yellow strobing lights, deep shadows, quite monochrome aesthetics, maybe smoke or mist effects. Put all the cool things in a regularly lit room and all the rubber alien things probably look a little dull. Also, films often have a look, not only the dramatic lighting, but the colors used and enhanced. Like the most recent Wes Anderson film on aliens, a very striking look, yet not how we would paint a miniature for the tabletop. Or like I watched the most recent installment of Blade Runner recently, a gorgeous film, and a lot of it is yellow. If you would paint a scene from the film, you'd have to use yellow paint for faces, and not Caucasian skin tone. Moods are a big thing in film, and quite often they're not as crisp and real-life correct as we miniature painters paint. We do, for the most part, paint our skin with skin tone and leather with leather tones and so on. Because my mental image of the Alien film mood is something that I don't really feel like trying to paint, I instead opted to be inspired by the Alien comics. Comics do have massively moody looks too, but a lot of the fun ones I found were colorful, where the film is monochromish. And I mean, the contrast of color is not only fun, but very helpful when painting little miniatures that are kinda hard to see from a distance. Or not to see, because of the camouflage. I took this style to heart when working on the diorama. The diorama is a small scene, identical in size to all the similar Space Marine dioramas I've made in the past. I've linked the playlist up top to prior builds and ideas if you haven't seen them already. By the way, if you'd like to support me in my venture of making videos like this, please consider supporting through Patreon. Patreon is a monthly subscription type service that provides the financial support I need to be able to keep all this up and running. You can find the link to my Patreon down in the video description. I'd also be very grateful for a like. Pressing the like button helps not just boost my ego, but spreads the video to people who in turn might enjoy it. Thank you. Now, I envision a storeroom, eggs and potential facehuggers all over. The colonial Space Marine has, despite a facehugger wrapped around its face, managed to blast another little xenomorph in mid-air. Boom, splack, very comic book style. All the 3D printed little eggs files I found on my mini factory fit perfectly on the 3D printed storage chest file from Anvil Industries. I then broke the 3D printed jumping face hugger to bits and reassembled it in a blasted state, adding strains of mushy inside goo with the help of UV resin. I've received complaints in the past of my non-understanding of the great explosive power of Space Marine bolt guns. I've tried to say, well, sorry if I'm messing with the obvious facts of how guns work in a made-up universe 40,000 years into the future, but the truth of the matter is that dioramas would be utterly boring if fantasy ballistics were taken too seriously. There would be nothing left around the Marine, and I'd get tired of doing rubble dioramas. Not much of a story going there, but if it feels better, maybe the explosive round went straight through the alien. Because of its small size, it didn't explode, instead blasting its way through the hull at the end of the storeroom, breaching the hull, and in only milliseconds this entire little scene will be sucked out into space where everything strangely implodes. The end. I haven't watched all the Alien films, but somehow I've picked up that the eggs connect by some kind of umbilical cords, kind of like the fiber cables at a LAN party. This combination of simple crafting of a base, some 3D printed assets, then tied together by handmade elements is for me a rewarding way to work with dioramas. I can hide all my plebeian craft levels with detailed 3D prints, yet tie it all together into a scene that looks a little more personal and individual. Painting the diorama was an unusual frenzy of sporadic paint attacks, sticking to the inspiration of a more comic book colourful, blending that with the grim dark of the Warhammer future, but also gradually building up the layers of paint all over the diorama, step by step, rather than finishing single elements individually. Unfortunately, it's kind of difficult to show and explain in a video like this, at least I think it is. Please let me know in the comments, but I've always thought that a clear step-by-step guide on a single piece tends to be more pedagogic. In this case, I let one area inspire the next, organically building up the paint job, ideas bouncing off one end of the diorama to resonate with the other end. Starting out with transparent paint over a Zenithal Prime, trying to find the mood I was after, rather than going for anything like perfection. Balancing the on-film set rubber eggs against the comic book in my head. Giving these alien reproductive systems a more varied look, maybe, as well as try and keep away from them looking too much like, well, external human reproductive systems. I also had issues with the xeno-umbilical cords looking too much like poo, or where poo is made. You can, by the way, see me battle that particular problem in one of my live streams, linked above. There's a lot of painted on textures going everywhere, a lot of little scribbles and dots and slashes and stabs, with both regular opaque paint, transparent paint and washes. I try to let the now coloured Zenithal Prime shine through in places. I cover it with opaque paints where I think it's needed. Like the eggs, what is visible is probably 50% contrast paint over Zenithal Prime and 50% opaque paint in various types. I was quite mindful of the shading created by the Zenithal Prime. By the way, if you don't fully grasp what a Zenithal Prime is, I'm now linked to one of my videos on Zenithal priming up top. But I wanted that depth, a little bit of murky shadows here and there. Being mindful and following that Zenithal Prime worked out pretty well, but I also enhanced the shadows dramatically in places. Enjoying the look of the dark Kraken green instant paint, a contrast style paint, it added a slight cool green tint to the shaded areas that gave me a bit of a film look. It also tied everything together nicely, giving all the different elements the same tone or color in the shadows. So I also gave the marine the same treatment so that the shadows on the legs would color match that on the diorama. I wasn't quite sure what color I wanted to go for the insides of the splashed face hugger, eventually deciding on a warm yellowish squashed bug type color. My only regret now is the yellow hose on the chest in the background, as that bright yellow kind of takes away the focus from the almost yellow insides of this horrible little alien creature. Just the one yellow feature on this diorama would have been enough. And as the facehugger is a major feature, it should demand attention. We live and we learn, huh? When the miniature was glued in place, checking everything one last time, deciding that everything looked good, I varnished everything with an ultra matte varnish. This is just my thing. I love the look of a matte surface. I did, however, after the varnish had cured, paint over the facehugger intestines with UV resin, trying to add a layer that has a bit of ripple and movement to it, so that not only is there a rather thick coating of clear glossy liquid, a lot thicker than a glossy varnish, it also has some shapes to it that when catches the light hopefully looks a bit more interesting than just a regular coat of gloss varnish. So how do you think this is gonna go? Has the facehugger crushed the Space Marine's helmet somehow? Will it get ripped off by an armored fist before things go too far? What are the implications if not? A mutant alien not all too far removed from the glorious Emperor? How much of the aesthetic of these aliens have in fact inspired the Tyranids of Warhammer 40k? Or is it mainly Starship Troopers? Why wear camouflage in space? There's many questions still, but making the diorama was fun, and I do hope you like it. Thank you to my dear patrons for the support that keeps this all going. Thank you to Frontier Wargaming for supporting this video and creators like myself. Thank you for watching. I had a great time. Bye.